it's fun for a guy who's never had to do any kind of computer stuff at all, and just like give it up.
I got you wired up now.
Yeah, I said give it up, give it up. I said anything I say now can and will be used to head against me, right?
Yeah. What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the I'm Here For It podcast. We got a good one teed up for you today. This is the podcast where we talk about real life with real people, authentic conversations, just a couple of people being honest about life, talking about real things, real emotions, and we want you to know we're here for it. The good, the bad, the ugly, the beautiful, all of it. This life is complex and it's messy, and the I'm Here For It podcast is here for it. I have a great episode for everybody today. This is my friend, someone I guess we met, Scott. First, Scott Chivinski, everybody.
Yeah.
I guess we met first coaching, probably.
No. Little League.
Little League. Get out of here.
Yeah. Well, your brother Matt and my son Andrew are exactly. In fact, they were born on the same day.
Get out of here.
And they were good friends.
Yeah.
All through high school.
Yeah.
But they both started playing, not t-ball, but minor league and little league. So you were 2 years ahead. So,
yeah.
You were. I don't know. I never coached you, but I knew you knew the family.
Right.
We've known your
yeah.
whole family for. I mean, Andrew's 46, so for 46 years.
You don't have to go telling everybody how old we are. So you've been, Little League, you've coached youth sports your whole life, probably.
Yeah.
We coached together Blue Mountain Soccer for years. Yeah. And I should have figured out how many years.
20.
There you go, age. You were 20. I think I was there for 16.
I started coaching at Blue Mountain the second year they had junior high soccer, so I think it was the third year of soccer. Matt and Andrew both were seventh graders, and Rob came to me and said, you've been doing the youth program really good, so you want to jump in. And I was the assistant junior high coach for 1 year, and then I was the head junior high coach, and then I just started help coaching everything.
Yeah. And then you were up with high school when I was up there.
Yeah, up to high school.
And then you've been, you have so many things you've been into.
Yeah.
Big time construction, owned your own business for a long time.
Yep.
What I love about that part of your life, and we'll talk about it later, is you're very creative and good at it's not just like building a building.
Yeah.
Yeah. So all kinds of different things. You've spoken places, you've done public speaking in churches and for assemblies and for all kinds of different things. I'm just really excited to have you here. We're going to get into it.
Yeah,
it's good.
Hey.
Thanks for coming.
I love it. This is another step of the journey God has had me on, and it's just one more step, getting closer and closer to the finish line. Of where He really wants me to be involved in all this stuff.
Yeah.
He's given me a lot, and I try to give it all back, but you come up short. You always know there's something else you could have done or said,
right,
to further the cause.
And that's just life. It
is.
That's the part of this crazy journey we're on. It's a journey where you get it right, and sometimes you get it wrong, and you're just one step at a time. And that's what I like about you. You're always just taking the next step, even day to day. Just the next step. Yeah. But what I want to start with is a little bit crazy. And I don't even know if I understand the whole depth of it. I really want the listeners to hear you had a traumatic fall.
Yeah.
And it was bad.
It was as ugly as it could possibly get.
Can you tell the story?
It's September 6th, 2006. It was a Wednesday after Labor Day, and I was doing a building in Lake Winona, a huge, big addition to a property. The total height of the building was 40 feet. It was a big building. And I was up that morning just finishing the framing out on the top of this little tower section, and I have no clue what happened. Knowing me, I probably tried to jump from one place to the next, and I shouldn't have. In any event, I fell through about 10 feet through some scaffolding, slid down about 23 feet of a 12 pitch roof, tearing roof jacks out as I was going down. And in the last 23 feet, straight down to the ground.
Oh.
So a total of 40 feet. If you do the math, you know how to figure all that stuff out. I was probably going about 25, 26 miles an hour when I hit the ground. The damage was significant.
Yeah. I mean, like when I hear that story, I go, you probably should be dead.
Yeah. Well, I should be. Both arms, both bones completely broken, shattered. You have 8 metacarpal bones in your wrist. I have 14 pieces in my right wrist and 16 pieces in my left wrist. From my top of my eyebrow to my mouth and my nose to my left ear, this was broken in 14 pieces.
Oh, man.
And all of that wasn't bad enough. I also broke the C2 bone in my neck. On the left lobe, the C2 bone on your neck. If you ever watched the old movies when they're hanging somebody, and they have the noose just to the left.
This is gruesome, but yeah.
Well, that's why. That's the bone they want to break.
Okay.
They call it the hangman's break. I went through a lot of stuff, and the next 6 weeks. First off, the first guy who got to me had.
Before you get to that,
go ahead.
Did you land like on your arm, shoulder area?
No, I fell.
How did you?
The young man who was working for me at the time had just turned the corner of the building and saw me, and he later said, "Yeah, you know how when you drop a cat upside down at the last second it lands on its feet?
Yeah.
Well, you were coming down sideways. At the last second, you turned and landed face and chest and arms first into the ground."
Is that what saved your life? Landed that way?
Part of it, yeah, because my ribs were slight cracks in them, but because I took all the damage there.
In your arms.
Yeah, there. I didn't. They said that, if I hadn't done that, my ribs probably would have tore into my heart and my lungs. So.
How about that guy? Poor guy's having a snack and
Well,
walks around the corner and boss is flying from the sky.
That's the interesting thing. He had just looked down, saw the coffee pot was empty, and went, "Oh, geez, I got to go get water for the coffee." Scott likes to have his coffee. He just turned the corner and saw me, and he wasn't the first guy to get to me. The first guy that got to me had some EMT experience, and said he's dead. Couldn't hear, no pulse, couldn't hear me breathing or anything like that. And he pushed everybody away, and then Ben tried to get close to him. The guy pushed him back again, and Ben knocked him down, and turned. He had lifeguard ability,
right?
So he knew how to
some CPR training.
Yeah,
and
he
stuff.
knew how to turn me over, and he turned me over and got me breathing again. So that was it. But the doctors, I heard later. You learn all this stuff later. People who break that bone in your neck, only 1 out of 1,000 doesn't die instantly. I mean, it's there's an artery that feeds your brain, and if you break it, it splits the artery, and
you're done.
You're done. If you don't die, out of the people who don't die, 1 out of 1,000 is not permanently paralyzed. It's the same bone that Christopher Reeve broke falling off a horse.
Okay.
So they look at that, and they looked at all the other damage, and they're like, "Scott, you realize you're like 1 in 100 million."
I was just going to ask you if you ever figured out like
the odds are phenomenal, But.
So in the instant aftermath, they turn you over, they find you have a pulse, you're breathing, they rush you to the hospital.
Yeah.
What's the next?
The cool thing there was they called for life flights.
Yeah.
And they Hershey, Lehigh, and Geisinger were grounded, supposedly.
Yeah.
So they said, bring them to Pottsville. The EMT, who is now an elder at a church in Palo Alto, basically said, I got to get him to a trauma center. So they drove me down to Tower Health, which is now Tower Health down in Reading. I got the tower down there. And I had the chief orthopedic surgeon of the hospital did my arms, wouldn't touch my wrists. He called Lenny Marchinsky in to do my wrists.
Is that a specialist?
A specialist who had experience doing players for the Phillies and the Eagles and stuff. He came in, and he was supposed to be on vacation. Doesn't know why he didn't go that week, but he didn't. He came in. Craig Johnson, whose father was JFK's back doctor, took care of my neck. And Ben Schlechter, who my wife was going to pick a different doctor for the surgeon to do my face, and a nurse from the ICU saw her, walked in and said, I could get arrested for doing this, but Ben Schlechter is a perfectionist. And my wife was like, that's God,
Yeah.
tell me.
I mean, you start to get that sense here when you're telling your story.
There's just so many times. There's so many times when people listened to the spirit that was telling them what to do and the right thing to do, and they went against odds. It's to say, I don't care. This
is what we need to do in this moment.
It needs to happen.
So you're sitting in the hospital when you. I'm assuming you went right into surgery.
Oh God, yeah. Like,
are you conscious for any of this?
No.
Just out.
I was. I was never unconscious. I never went into a coma or anything like that. They had me on like 40 different drugs to keep me where I was. Because of the brain trauma, I had a hematoma over most of my brain. Some of it was as much as 3/4 of an inch deep. I don't have any recollection of anything from that day until October 8th. So almost 5 weeks later.
So 5 weeks, it's just like a blank slate.
Yeah, I don't know. They said I was, nasty and yelling at people.
Well, I mean, a pretty traumatic brain injury, and your body's in excruciating.
Let me out of here. I got to go work to do. I was telling my son, they telling Alex, get the truck and bring it around to that door over there.
You're trying to get your son to bounce it from us.
I'm gonna go down the hall, and you can get me
out.
You can get me back to the job. Get back to the job stuff. So they said it was kind of typical of someone with that kind of a brain trauma and stuff like that. But
so when you started to be lucid and have October, what was that, 8th?
October 8th, yeah.
What was that?
By then I was out of the hospital and over at Health South, which is a rehabilitation center, and the ward that I was in was all for people who had traumatic brain injuries, motorcyclists, quadriplegics, paraplegics, people who did not have much life expectancy. I could walk around anywhere, not a scratch from the waist down,
Right.
I was hooked up to IVs all the time, and I had a nurse who had to follow me all the time because I was constantly trying to escape, so that kind of stuff. But that was the first time I remember overhearing the nurses and the staff and the doctors talk about how bad it was.
Yeah.
He'll never use his hands again. He's going to be like a third grader for the rest of his life. So he's never going to work. It was all these nevers.
Yeah.
And I found myself at the end of a hallway, and just yelling at God, why?
Yeah.
Why me? I'm not perfect. I screw up. When I do, I always try to do better. I help. I do stuff. I volunteer at the church. I do this. I do that. Why me? Why me? And Josh, it got real quiet. All the background noise of that area just got quiet. Like an amethyst light, purpley mist started to just come down, and I felt God behind me, and He said, "Scott, you're right. We've had a pretty good walk, but it's going to get glorious. You'll be amazed at how this changes other people's lives." And I just got, okay, everything's going to be okay.
Yeah.
It wasn't about you're going to use your hands and build things and do none of that.
Yeah.
This was going to change other people's lives. And it was just put me on a whole. They said, when my wife came in, down that day or whatever, they were like, he's changed. He's quiet. He's not fighting this. He's not arguing with us.
You weren't trying to escape anymore?
No more trying to escape.
I mean, I'd imagine that time before you had that experience, there was some probably pretty dark moments.
I don't remember any of them.
Right.
I know that my wife and the kids, Andrew flew in from California and was spending some time there. The news they were getting was
really bad.
Wasn't ugly because they weren't trying to scare her.
Right.
But they weren't giving her any good news.
Right.
They weren't giving her good.
So kind of like, we're not going to get their hopes up.
No,
but let's
exactly.
protect them a little bit from the reality of the situation.
Yeah, exactly. I mean,
but you had heard doctors saying, like, this guy's jacked up for life.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anything we get out of him. And here you're sitting here across from me. your face does not look any more jacked up than it normally does.
It's an They improved it. They improved it.
They look a little better.
That's what I said. I said at the one church I spoke to, I said, I was not this good looking before the accident.
But you look like you're in phenomenal shape, and you still are very active.
Yeah.
Do you have any lingering problems with your body?
Yeah.
Still a lot of pain?
The wrist, my left wrist is only really 30% functional.
Yeah.
The right wrist is probably 50 or 60. I'm getting feeling in my fingertips back a little bit more all the time. But
still from that long ago,
well,
it's still like...
I don't have a carpal tunnel.
Okay.
All those nerves were just completely
destroyed.
Messed. So, my feeling in my tips of my fingers is completely different than what anybody else is. I can still sense things, but it's a different way of feeling it. I can't turn my head to the left, to the back, the best way. I got forbidden from the surgeon. One of them, Chivinski in particular, was like, he says, you said you used to ride dirt bikes. I'm like, no more motorcycles. You fly airplanes. No more flying airplanes. You skydive? No. Don't swing a hammer. There was just all these rules, which I just, knowing me, went, I'll find a way to break those things. Get away.
So you're still carrying a lot of pain from that.
It's weather dependent,
Right.
A lot of that. So when you have that much steel in your body, it just changes things,
Yeah.
So.
All right, so you have that moment with God.
Yeah.
And for our listeners, right? Like that's not, I don't know if God works that way with everybody in every situation, but he certainly is more than capable of meeting us in unique ways. He's not contained by box. So you have this moment with God where you felt like he was just reorienting you with your future, kind of like centering you on what's most important.
It's all okay. But my wife Rhonda would come in and talk with me all the time and everything, and I would, especially when I was getting really upset and like, well, I can't do this, I can't, what. I don't remember those. That was before I had the moment with, on the 8th of October. But I can remember afterwards, I would say, they're just tell me, and she said, Scott, God loves us. We have to find peace with him in this, because she was paraphrasing Romans 8:28.
Yeah.
God can take anything.
Yeah.
He's going to take this and make something really good out of it, for not just for me and not for you, for everybody. And it was like, you know what? Okay. Whatever this is.
I mean, she's an amazing woman.
Oh, yeah.
You guys have had an amazing relationship for a long time.
Yeah.
I've gotten to watch that over the years, because we've known each other and have coached together and stuff. And you've had... She's a gem.
She is. I said to her probably at least 3 or 4 times a week, I have no idea what you see in me.
It's the new face.
I have no idea, because I have a goofy sense of humor and stuff like that.
So she was just a constant reminder to you that it's okay.
Yeah.
Almost like in different ways, just repeating what you felt like you had heard from God.
Yeah.
It's okay.
Yeah. We're going to do it. We're going to make it.
That's some of the most powerful, I think. The more, and you probably know this because you talk with a lot of people too, like that are struggling or hurting, trying to figure out stuff in life. The more I do that, the more I find like that is what I need to hear most often, and I think what other people need to hear. Like, it's a mess right now. It's not good.
Yeah.
It's not okay, but you're okay. It's gonna be okay.
Yeah. Even after that, there were some situations and some stuff that's happened that in one way or another may be even worse than that. Worse than that. But our faith gets us through it every single time. We could, at the end of the day, you're pulling your hair out and you're going to go, we're giving it to God, and we're just going to have to wait for the answer to hit, wait for where we're going to be. But we're not going to quit. We're not going to get ugly. We're not going to be, PO'd about it.
That's a good commitment. I remember sitting down, having dinner with a friend who's known me pretty well for a long time. We don't see each other very often. But we were down in Lancaster grabbing dinner after a conference, And he's another pastor of a pretty big church, and I'm sure it's no secret that I'm a pastor to our listeners, among other things. But I'm sitting down with him, and it was after, it was after my dad had died. So that was in October 2021. It might have been, that was early October. It might have been the end of that month or somewhere in there. And I was sitting down, and he's been there for the loss of my brother in the car accident. He was around for the loss of my mother to cancer. And then he, was just a supportive, good friend. And I remember him sitting down in front of me, and we were having this talk and just being really honest. And I was, feeling it and just sharing from him, from deep places of my heart, stuff I probably didn't share with other people. And there was this moment in the conversation, he didn't lead with this, he did a lot of listening and we did a lot of talking, but there was a moment where he goes, Josh, man, like, your brother's okay, and your mom's okay, and your dad's okay.
Yeah.
And your kids are going to be okay.
Yeah.
And you're going to be okay. Your wife's going to be okay, and your brothers are going to be okay. Like, it doesn't feel good, and it's not okay. The situation you're in is not okay, but you're going to be okay. And there was like a rush of relief. I felt like there was a burden lifted off of me.
Yeah.
And that's kind of like what I hear from you is like God saying to you, hey, yeah, doctors are saying some pretty bad stuff, and you're in a lot of pain, and things are not going good, and you got plates in your head and plates in your arms and plates everywhere, and you're being told you're not going to do any of this stuff.
Yeah.
And God's saying, it's okay.
Yeah.
And then your wife, who is attentive to God, is going, it's going to be okay.
Yeah. Yeah. After the accident, when I was able to drive, because I lost my driver's license and everything, but I got my license and everything, and I was going back down to the hospital, every week, and then every 2 weeks, and every month for almost a year. And I'd cross paths in the hospital with different people who remembered me. My picture, They had my picture on the wall down there.
That's not where you want to have your picture on the wall.
No, it wasn't in the morgue, though. That was
right. Well, that's good. Yeah.
But they would say, your wife was unbelievable. Her faith was so strong, and she was just so solid all the time. And I remember coming back and saying something to her about it, and she goes, do you remember when you came home like a year ago? I had listened to a song, Grace Like Rain by Todd Agnew. One of the few old songs I like was Amazing Grace.
Yeah, great song.
Just great song. Well, this is the variation of Amazing Grace. And I heard it on the radio, and I'm like, got to get it. Drove right to the Goodwill bookstore, went in, got the song, and I'm checking out the cash register, and it's raining outside, and the roof leaks, and it leaks right on my head as I'm buying the song. And the lady's like, oh my God, it never leaks here. It always leaks in the back. I'm really sorry. I'm like, don't worry about it. I said, I'm in construction. I work in this stuff all the time. I'm not worried. I flew home, put the song on, and got out, put the song in for Ron. I said, what do you hear? She's listening to, I'm telling her what's happening. And she told me this much later. When I said to her about all the people, she goes, Scott, she goes, remember when you brought that song home and you played it and you told me what happened? She goes, God spoke to me and said, I'm going to be doing something major in this man's life. And she said, and that's when you fell in the accident and all this stuff. I just thought, okay, God, this is pretty major. Yeah. And I...
Oh, wait, so this Grace Like Rain thing was before.
Oh, yeah, it was like...
This was before the fall.
Like a year before the fall.
Wow.
And she held on to that, never said a word.
Yeah.
Never said it until I told her how about everybody. She goes...
Yeah, pretty major.
How could I not... Why would I be concerned about it when God's telling me I'm going to do something major in his life? And it's like, man, it's like, holy cow. I wish, then I'm thinking to myself, okay, I'm supposed to be the guy who's really tuned into God. Why did, when the rain did fall on my head in the middle of a store, did I not go, I'm buying the song, Grace Like Rain, there's grace falling on me. How could I didn't put that spiritually connection? How come I didn't spiritually, why was I not listening to that part of me that would go, Scott, this isn't just a coincidence, dude. You know?
Yeah, I mean, you and I are both, and maybe our listeners are a little different. But you and I are both people who do not believe in coincidences.
No.
We believe that
No.
God's doing stuff all around us, and most of the time we're just not paying attention. It doesn't surprise me that you didn't think of the water, because most of us are not tuned into just observing and listening and all those things. Since your accident, you've been very tuned in.
I'm more tuned in.
I mean, that'll get your attention.
Yeah.
Falling 40 feet,
Yeah.
will get your attention.
Yeah, I spoke on the radio. I spoke on GRC like a year or whatever afterwards. They found out and they had me up for 1 hour, and I remember saying to the guy, I said, if I had probably done a year or 2 years worth of, whatever, getting asked to speak at churches and whatever, and I said to him, if I had known it was going to be this fruitful and easy to be able to talk to people, I'd have thrown myself off a roof years ago. And he's like, no. It's like, it's just amazing.
So how different? How's life different now than before your accident?
Well, you had talked about me being creative in the construction business and stuff, and that was probably one of my best gifts.
Yeah,
was that I've got a real good, strong engineering background. And I'll go into this again too. The artistic, aesthetic side of it, I love.
Yeah,
I
you're
love
very
it.
good at that.
I love.
I mean, I've gotten to see some of your stuff. You're very good at it.
I love it. Well, to be able to sit down and have a conversation with a couple who's going to build a new house or remodel, or a township who's putting a whole new building up, and just to be able to listen to all that and in my mind interpret the best way to do it and give them more than they wanted in a better way than they wanted. It's a gift. I don't have to hammer my nails to do that. I can create it and see it in my head and put it together for people. So that's like, it's like I can still do that.
Yeah.
My hands are bad, my back is bad, my shoulders are bad, my knee is bad, everything else is bad from whatever decades of beating myself up. But everything that was in between my ears, God didn't take any of that away.
Yeah.
What was in my heart, he just bloomed and made it better.
I mean, that's the amazing part. I mean, that you have that traumatic brain injury, but that was preserved.
Yeah.
And like when you're telling that story about things, I'm like, man, that's a gift to share that story, because there's people that are physically, I see a lot of them. You probably see a lot of them. Like in my line of work, I know a lot of people that are carrying really bad chronic pain, have been through really bad injury. They're having to deal with the stuff like you're dealing with, where like things don't function the way they would. I don't have feeling in my fingers, or I got pain in my back every day. And that can be a very discouraging grind. And I think that there's power in going like, okay, so you've gone through this. You've stayed attentive to what God's directing you. Yeah, things are different. You can't do everything you used to do. You're not going to be jumping out of any airplanes. You're not going to be, like your wrists can't do things that they used to do. Your fingers can't feel things they used to feel. But you have been able to stay positive, largely, it seems like, due to your faith. But you've been able to walk through going like, okay, so it's different, but it's still good.
Oh, yeah.
And God's still doing big stuff.
And I find myself begging, God, give me something.
Yeah.
Give me not, like I said earlier, if I'd have known could be this good, I'd thrown myself off a roof.
So what's your daily mindset? Like, you're a positive guy.
Yeah.
You're always looking to move forward. You're a guy who's always looking to help somebody. When you wake up in a day, like, what's your mindset for the day?
I probably depends on, I get up early, whatever time I get up, I have my little cup of coffee, I check through the news and the emails and Facebook, see whatever all the goofy stuff is going on. And then I got my little index cards, I write my little notes. This is today, Monday, this is boom, 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 who I got to call, who I got to see, what I got to go after. And I just, I want every chance that I have that day to be positive with whatever's going, no matter what. I mean, I get people all the time looking at me going, when some bad stuff happens.
Yeah.
I get a construction project where a subcontractor or somebody is just, or the engineer or whatever is just being off the wall, just off the wall, and you sit there and you go, and I solved the problem, and I've been doing it for 20 years. I've been doing all kinds of projects, and I get somebody looking at me going, I'd have killed that person. You didn't scream at him, you didn't yell at him, you didn't. I said, no. I fixed it. I knew what I could do. I had to make some concessions or whatever. I made it right. We're going to move forward. I don't know how you could do that. And I was look at him and go, look, what's the worst thing that could happen? What's the worst thing that could happen to you?
Yeah,
you could die. I did that. I did.
So that's really changed your perspective day to day.
I did it. It's like I'm looking for. I had 2 heart attacks.
Yeah.
The second one, which was about 7 years ago, 3 times on the ambulance on the way to the hospital, they had to jump start me and bring me back.
That was a bad heart attack.
That was a bad one.
I remember you telling me that it felt like what it felt like. You described it like an elephant or something sitting.
Yeah, I just when I realized something was wrong, I felt like somebody was taking an umbrella and driving it really hard right in the center of my chest. The pain was incredible. And I got drove back to the office and yelled up the steps, called the ambulance, and then the guys got here, and I'm like, take me to Tower Health. Oh, well, we just can't. We may just take you to the five. No, take me to Tower Health. That's my hospital. That's where my doctors are.
I got a picture of
that's my place. And then they when they did the testing, they realized it was bad. So they said, okay, we're taking you to Tower Health. We've got to take you to a heart trauma center. And then, we're going down, no sirens, just driving down. And, all of a sudden I wake up and the sirens are going off and I could feel it. And I could see the guy holding the shockers in his head. He goes, Scott, whatever
crashed.
We crashed, whatever it is, we had a shock. And, okay, all right, okay, fine, all right. Then now he's on using my cell phone to tell my wife, who he had told earlier, don't worry about it, just take your time going down.
Yeah.
No, you better get down there now. So she's got that to deal with. I need someone to watch the dogs. I got to, whatever. And the second time going down, it happened again. Time was cool. Because when I came back,
you don't hear people describe those.
Well,
cool.
After the second,
yeah.
Because when I came back, when I opened my eyes the second time, I saw my son. I saw Alex, right there. The BMT was there, but I saw Alex right there with me. He was like, Dad, don't worry about it. It's going to be okay.
Well, there's that. It's going to be okay again.
Yeah, it's going to be okay. And then the third time was actually while they were taking me up to the operating room. I crashed the third time then. Oh. So, yeah.
You got to stop knocking on heaven's door, man.
Yeah, I'm knocking. I just want to open the door and say, hey, listen.
Hey, guys, good to see you. I'll be back later.
Yeah, right. So,
yeah, you don't have to keep visiting. You can just wait.
Yeah. Oh, goodness.
So you have a perspective on life that is a gift.
I want everyone to have it.
Yeah.
I want everyone to have it. I just want, I don't, as bad as it's been. I mean, I go through the same thing when I talk to my daughter, our sons. It's like, yeah, it's bad. This what you're going through is bad, but you can beat it. You can beat a lot of it. You can beat on your own. You don't need any help. You can beat on your own. But the big important stuff you need help with.
Yeah.
And it's not that hard to get.
Yeah.
It's just a little humility and a little step back and go, all right, smile, take a deep breath, look at life, look at the trees, life is good.
Yeah, I wish more people found that too, because you said that, and I wish more people found that. Like, yeah, it's bad. You can get through it.
Yeah.
take a breath. The big stuff in life you need help with.
Yeah.
We've been on the soccer field together quite a bit.
Yeah.
Our time at Blue Mountain,
Yeah.
coaching high school together, under Rob Bursick. Do you have any moments?
I got a couple of them. Couple of really interesting. I was at a coach's clinic, and I think it was a baseball coach's clinic or something.
Okay.
At some point in time, and lunch at break time, whatever. Guy was talking to the guy who was teaching and stuff. I said, man, I got this group of kids. I said, from one day to the next, I have no clue what they're going to do. They're going to be this, or they're going to whatever. And I say, pay attention. They don't pay attention. They have they have two left feet. Then they're phenomenal. He looked at me and he goes, "You're coaching a junior high boys sport in the fall, right?" And I went, "Yeah." I said, "Soccer." He goes, "Yeah, well, think about it." He goes, "They're seventh graders. The year before they were in elementary school, they had one teacher all day long. Now all of a sudden they got 6 different teachers. Puberty's kicking in. Everything." He goes, "It's just the way it's going to be. You got to go roll with it."
Yeah.
So we're playing. The junior high team. There was no junior high league in Schuylkill County, so we played all over the place. So one of the teams we played was Wilson out of Reading, which is one of the best premier high school programs in the state.
Yeah.
Always good. So we play everybody twice. So we had played them, right? And they thumped us. I don't know what the score, but they just thumped us. And we played them down there. Well, a couple of weeks later, we're practicing and everything. The kids had it hard practice dumb. And I look at the end of the practice, I was like, guys, I said, no clue what's going on with you. And I stopped. I went, "What'd you guys have for lunch?" And I don't remember what they said. I really don't. I said, "Oh," and I just went, "Oh, that stuff's terrible for you. It messes up your head. You just everything." Anyway, 2 or 3 weeks later, we have to play Wilson.
Yeah.
And they're coming to Blue Mountain. Now, you may not remember, but the Wilson program is very professional.
Yeah.
The kids come out, they've got matching warm-ups, matching gym bags, matching everything, and they march right out onto the field, all in order. They get out, they do all their exercises, everything by the book, right? So, okay, that's great. We end up beating them 3-2. And I'm like going, afterwards, I mean, we did everything right.
Yeah.
The kids played above their ability. It was a really great game. And afterwards, I'm like, "God, it was a great game, guys. You just wonderful. You won great, everything. You're really good. I'm really proud of you," and everything like that. And then one kid guy goes, "Coach," he goes, "Guess what?" He says, "They had whatever it was. Let's say meatloaf. They had meatloaf for lunch today." And I went, "Yeah." He goes, "Well, we all know what that does to you, so none of us ate." And I'm like, okay, they're 7th and 8th grade kids. They just believed me saying something goofy like that, and they took it to heart. Nobody ate. We're not eating. We're going to be playing better.
You know what they say? Hungry dogs run faster.
Yeah, it was good. It was like, oh, okay. Going back into the other, I said earlier, we were around when they started soccer in Schuylkill County. Under 10s.
Yeah.
All right. Your dad takes the team. Up to under 10s. Your dad did not a soccer coach.
No. He didn't know soccer.
No, nobody. I didn't know it. I didn't know it. Takes the team. The kids, Andrew and Matt, were on the team.
Okay.
They're playing over in Minersville. And I'm watching the game, and they're playing the whole game. And the first half ends over. The second half comes out. Andrew's out on the field. Andrew gets the ball. And he takes off down the field, right in the wrong direction.
Get out of here.
Because they changed goals.
Yeah, right.
They changed goals. He's running down the field the wrong direction. I mean, he gets all the way down. I mean, and everybody's yelling. Both the team. He's just going like crazy, and looks up, realizes it's my goalkeeper, and stops. Your dad takes him off the field. He's dejected. He's like, doesn't want to play. So 10 minutes later, he goes back in, plays again, and we're getting in the car to go home and everything. And I'm like, I'm the I'm the gung ho wrestler. Go,
Yeah, yeah.
I'm like, okay, Andrew, what do you think? He goes, Coach said it was a great game, and I'm thinking he went the wrong way. And I said, yeah, Mr. Ott said it was good. He goes, yeah. He said I was so good, nobody from either team could catch me. And I'm like going,
It's kind of true though.
leave it to Randy to just go, you know what, nothing's going right, but I got to fight. And which is, one of the best ways. It's a piece of coaching advice and counseling advice that I've used a lot of times. Doesn't matter how bad something's going. Find something positive you can talk about to start your conversation.
Yeah.
Because then the person's not going to be suicidal over the edge.
Yeah.
That's with you. So it was just like, okay.
I mean, I could hear him saying that. He would do that.
Yeah.
Less with his own kids, more with
typical. Yes.
More with other
I used to get Peg Pennypacker, who was the AD.
Yeah, I love
she used
Peg.
to come after me and say, Scott, I'm getting complaints about you. And I'm like, oh, gee, what am I doing wrong? She goes, you're beating up your own kids far worse than anybody else on the team. I said, he goes, you can't be, just. I said, okay, as long as I'm not beating somebody else's kids up,
It's hard to coach your own kids.
You set a high standard for them.
Yeah.
You set a high standard for them.
You want them to do so well, and you want to make it. If they're good, you want them to show it beyond a shadow of a doubt, so they can go like, "Hey, that dad is just playing his kid," or whatever.
That's a big. I used to tell them, they go, "Why are you picking up?" I said, I don't want anybody to think. I don't want anybody to ever come back and say, "I'm playing." I'm having it as easy on you as anybody else.
Yeah,
I'm gonna be hard. I have to be a little harder. Otherwise, it comes back on me, and it comes back on you. It'll just even be worse.
Yeah.
The most fun team I coached was the group that we talked about earlier, where they lost a boy.
Yeah.
That boy, when he was a senior, or a junior, that was the most fun group I ever coached.
Did he pass away before his senior year?
Yeah.
Because I was just in college or coming back from college.
Yeah,
I think I was in college when that happened.
Yeah, it was early June, because our son Nick was down at the beach when it happened. He was a senior. He had graduated and he was gone. First week of June when that happened, when he fell up in the Poconos, walking a bunch of friends, hiking with a bunch of friends, and fell. That was tough. He was one of the funniest, best kids to play with. He would I had so much fun with him in junior high, and so much, that whole group. There was just, they were just a lot of fun. And I still see and talk with a bunch of them, here and there.
I know, and we're not going to mention their names just because of respect for family, and I didn't have a chance to talk to any of them, but we love this family, you and I both.
Oh, yeah.
We've had relationships, and I didn't know this young man because he just fell at a time where I was away in Chicago. So I didn't get to know him, but I know his brother, and I mean, what an amazing family. That was, I remember coming home and going to that, and it was just it's just so sad.
Yeah.
To see that family go through that, and everything that anybody has ever told me about that young man has been sounds like such a beautiful soul.
Oh yeah. He would mess something up on the soccer field, and would literally. Now this is, I was not the head soccer coach at the time.
Yeah.
I was just an assistant soccer coach at the time, but he would literally cruise by our side of the field where I was, and just go by and goes, "Hey, sorry, coach, I screwed up." I'd be like, "How could I yell at him?"
Yeah.
How could I yell at him? But then he'd go by 5 minutes later. He goes, "How about that one? Was that a good left foot?"
Yeah, because he was a good player.
He was a good player. Yeah, it was heartbreaking for the whole team.
How do you coach them? How did you walk through that with some of them? Like, that's a tough thing.
Yeah, at the service, at the funeral home, at the service, because I had always had a rule with all the kids: if you're having a problem, come to me.
Yeah.
I won't tell anybody about it. I won't tell your parents. I won't tell if it's
Right.
with their school, your friends, if it's your girlfriend, whatever. To ask me. I've been through all of it. I can help you out without judging you or
Yeah, just
beating
kind
you
of
up.
being that listening ear,
Yeah.
somebody they could open up to.
So I basically said to this group. There's about 6 of them there at the service. And I said something to them, and they're like, "Okay, coach, okay." About 2 weeks later or so, one of them calls me on the phone and says, "Hey, coach," he goes, "Can you meet me at the cemetery? I just want to meet at the cemetery." So I said, "Yep." Just dropped what I was doing. It was probably 6:00, 6:30 at night. Drove down, talked with him there for, I don't know, 15, 20, 30 minutes or whatever, until he kind of got a little at ease, and we left. And about like 2 years, 3 years later, this young guy gets married.
Yeah.
And my wife and I, we know the family and everything.
Yeah.
And so we get invited to the reception, and with the reception, we're getting ready to leave, and his mom just stops, says, "I owe you my son's life. We owe you my son's life." And I looked at her, and the family is standing there. He's standing there. His brothers are there. The dad's there. His wife is there.
Yeah.
They all. And I what are you talking about? She goes, "Remember when you had a talk with him? He came home after that talk and said, Coach told me how much more God has for me in my plans, and I cannot let this just be the thing that destroys me. I have so much going on for me. I got to keep moving on." He said, "Scott," he put a gun and some pills down on the table.
Jeez.
And I thought, holy jumping, and I thought, thank you, God.
Yeah.
I'll cry. Thank you for not letting me just say, "Hey, nah, I don't have the time.
Yeah. Oh, man.
Yeah, I'm too busy. Can we do it tomorrow? Whatever." How devastated I would have been if just to have a 20-minute conversation, and the kid is he's married. I think he's got 2 or 3 kids.
Yeah.
Very, very successful, working for a big company out west.
Yeah.
Occasionally, I'll see a Facebook picture post that he or his wife will post with him and the kids,
Yeah.
and what they're doing and stuff like that. And I went, you know what? We can't be afraid to speak up. And
show up.
And
there's so much power. So you got one. You never know what somebody's really going through.
No,
You don't. And the willingness of people to show up for other people,
Yeah.
you also never know how big of an impact those moments can have. You probably didn't even think of that moment as very significant.
I would have never, ever. They were best friends.
Yeah.
Okay, they were best friends. I would have somebody could have said, "Go make a bet. Do you think this kid's ever going to do anything close to that?" I would have went, "No way,
Right.
No, not him. No,
Right.
no." It's like no. So you don't I
You were just showing up for a
I
kid
just-
that you cared about.
yeah,
and
just-
who you following through on what you said.
Yeah,
like, hey, I'll be here for you.
Yeah, you need something.
You probably don't even remember what you said.
I don't. I don't think I probably didn't remember what I said.
5 minutes after you said it.
I got home, and I'm sure Rhonda just said, what's it going on? She goes, "Hey, he's fine. He's
Yeah.
okay. He just needed someone to talk
to.
to. That's all. This is his best friend, and a huge part of his life is just ripped away. And
Yeah.
and it's like, I don't know.
That's the power of just showing up for people and understanding that there's stuff going on that we don't see. And you never know how much God will use a moment like that to really impact.
And that's just a friendly face.
So there's people listening that they're not going to speak in front of a bunch of people like you or I do on occasion, right? Maybe they're never going to jump on a podcast and share their story, and they probably feel like, man, maybe I'm not making as big of an impact because they're not as vocal or their gifting isn't, as public or as out there as maybe other people that they compare themselves to. I actually think that kind of stuff makes the biggest difference. Just smile, just friendship, the showing up,
a hug,
just connection. Like there's we're in an increasingly disconnected world because of our phones and and it gives the illusion that we're connected, but we're not.
Not the way you're supposed to
be.
be.
And as soon as like you are there in presence, you show up and you're physically in the room having a conversation, just like we're talking right now, right? This is where you get the good stuff. Yeah. It's the conversation. It's the hug in the funeral line, like that young man's dad did for me when I lost my brother. Yeah. It's that hand on the shoulder when you're struggling and you come off the field and you're expecting to get yelled at, and it's like those little moments carry so much more weight than anybody ever gives them.
No, they count for 1,000 more points than whatever else you want to throw at it.
Yeah, that's more meaningful than a sermon I preach or. That's the stuff that matters, and anybody can show up for people that way.
Yeah. You don't have to be the best friend. You don't have, you know, the one place I worked afterwards for a little while when I left the first place was a nonprofit out of Bethlehem.
Yeah.
It was managed and run by a very spiritually strong minister.
Yeah.
At the time, I got to draw a blank for his name, but they had like 30 or 40 buildings.
Yeah.
Around the eastern part of Pennsylvania, and they were almost all were for young girls who came out of homes where the parents were both arrested, drugs, whatever they were, just really bad situations. And my job was to get everything organized, everything fixed up and organized. And like every month, they would bring all the staff in two separate occasions because they couldn't split staff out of the houses and stuff. And they talked about how you're dealing with it, and how you're dealing with it, and how you're dealing with all this stuff and everything. And the one person that was there when they were talking, she was like Scott really seems like he's only here like a month, and he's got more knowledge about all this than anybody else put here together. And this guy looked at me, he goes, Scott's going to be a pastor someday, so let it go. And I looked at him, I was like, I'm a pastor now.
Yeah.
I just because I don't have the degree of divinity or whatever it is,
job title, or
I don't. We're all called to be pastors.
We're all called to care for people, to love people, to show up for people.
That's it. It's like I'm sorry if it offends somebody, but too bad. Literally, too bad.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's my wife will say the same thing to me occasionally. She goes, "You care too much." I said, "No, so do you." Oh, then it'll be like, "Oh no, so do you." "Oh no, so do you." So do you. That kind. But it's like, I've missed not caring enough too much over the years.
Yeah.
It's
not going to happen again for you.
I don't want to be. I don't want to walk away at the end of the day as I'm falling asleep at 8:30 at night because I'm exhausted or whatever. I don't want my last thought to be, "Oh, you screwed that up."
Right.
You had an opportunity to make a change in someone's life, and tomorrow you better make a phone call. It's like I said, an oxymoron. At the same time, it's dreadfully heavy, and at the same time, it's dreadfully joyous to have it.
Yeah. And when you start living in that, and you're using the gifts God's given you and who you are and everything to help people, that adds a ton of joy to your life. And I can see it on you.
Yeah.
You light up. You come to church here, you have a row sometimes of people that are connected to younger people, right? Like some of them soccer players and people that and I can see you love that. It's a joy.
I got in high school, my senior year, and I don't think he wasn't there when you were there. My senior year, I had I think it was second semester. I had a chance. I knew I was going to try to go into Lehigh for engineering.
Right.
So I should have taken the physics course. I didn't like the physics teacher. I was like, no way, I'm not taking physics. going into Lehigh for engineering, should have taken the physics course. It would have helped. But you probably had Don Jones. English
No, I missed him.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I had Jones as an English teacher who was ferocious.
Yeah.
And I loved his classes, and I got straight A's, and I got great grades with him. But Mrs. Kurtz, who was the wife of the superintendent at the time, had a speech class. So I thought, I'll take a speech class, right? She was brutal. she was tough.
Yeah.
She taught me so much about speaking in public and not messing up and being able to get people's attention for what you're going to be doing. Well, guess what? 19 years ago, I had the accent. Well, even before that, I qualified with the American Institute of Architects. Architects have to get continuing education credits every year. And one of the classes they had to get was on health, safety, and welfare. I qualified to be an instructor in that division, right? So, I got these phone calls. I made a bunch of calls in Reading, Allentown, down in Harrisburg. I got a call from one guy who said, I need someone to come in and do 2 classes for me. I said, all right, Toledo, Ohio. I said, okay. He goes, how much do you want for it? I went, I don't know. Pay my expenses and give me $500. Thinking he'd say no. He goes, absolutely. Come in.
Yeah, that was probably the cheapest.
Yeah.
It's like this guy.
Because it was a tough class. It was there were very, if there were 500 classes to take, there might only be 5 or 6 guys that could qualify to do that class.
Right.
So so I was qualified to do it. I go out there I do two sessions. First session, there's like 100 guys there. Second session, there's like 500 people in the audience. Now I got to do an hour session, hour and 15-minute session, where I'm doing the instruction and talking about all this stuff, and then half an hour's worth of conversations and questions afterwards, because they all got to come up and say, well, what do you mean by this? I don't have a degree in engineering or architecture, and these guys all have their masters and their doctorates, and I'm teaching them. Well, I remember, I do the class, and guy comes up afterwards and he goes, that was really, really great. You really explained stuff to me that I never could understand and like that. And you went to Lehigh, right? I said, yeah, I went to, because you have to put that in your resume.
Yeah.
Didn't say that I graduated from Lehigh, just that I went to Lehigh. went to Lehigh. Yeah, what'd you major in? I said, wrestling. And he goes, okay, you wrestle. I said, yeah, a little bit. He goes, well, what else? I said, girls and the snack bar and shooting pool. No, seriously, really? What? I said, no, girls, snack bar, wrestling, and shooting pool. That's, I spent my time. Well, how'd you get through? I said, I was smart enough that I could coast until I went, nah, it's not for me.
Yeah.
And walked out. But I look back now and go, when I was 18 years old, God moved in my heart to take a speech class. So I can get on the radio, I can get up in front of large groups of people, I know what my message is, I have a rough outline of what I want to speak, whether it's at the school or whether it's here, whatever it is. And I don't stutter.
Yeah.
I know I could pick out the people. I spoke that Teen Challenge.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know the kind of guys that are in Teen Challenge.
Yeah,
These are
for
the
people that are listening, this is a Christian recovery organization.
Yeah, but these guys are all drug addicts, gangsters, rough guys. 110 guys I'm speaking down there. And within 2 minutes, I had everybody's attention.
Yeah.
So after an hour, I'm done. I had like 16 of these guys coming up and going, who I thought I was learning stuff. I thought I was getting stuff. You said this? My eyes just opened up and went, oh, that's what I've been waiting for. That's what.
Yeah.
It's like, God knew when I was 17 years old, Scott, you're going to take a speech class. Your dad's going to be mad at you. Everybody's going to go, what? What? It's paid off.
Yeah, it's so cool how God does that, like plants some of that stuff. And you sometimes you don't see it until you're 20, 30 years down the road.
Oh, my
gosh. You look back and you're like, oh, that prepared me.
That's why.
Yeah.
So that's why like Dr. Johnson said, that's why I wrestled and coached it all those years, because he knew I was going to be stupid and fall off a roof, and I would need those muscles, to work. So it's like, Anyway.
Yeah, man. Thanks for being on here,
dude. This was great.
It's been so good. What a great conversation. I'm excited about it. It's gonna be an awesome.
Anybody out there who reads it or sees it or looks at it, they come at me at church. Just get a hold of me.
You have an email or something somebody can contact you at? Or
Opah Scott, OPASCOTT, Opah Scott at Hotmail.
Perfect.
Opah's German for grandfather.
Nice.
So it's Opah Scott at hotmail.com. But
awesome.
Send me something. See me at church. Pull me aside. You want it the real truth, talk to the real rock. Grab my wife.
Yeah, she's a champ.
I always kid. I said she's been at almost the only time she doesn't go to us when I speak is if it's 2 services, and she'll go to the second one or whatever. But she'll I'll look at her occasionally, because if she feels I'm getting a little long-winded, she'll look at me and she'll just go like this. It's like, okay, honey.
She is one of the most sweetest people, most encouraging souls I've met.
She's a pretty thing.
All right, everybody. Thanks so much for being on here for this episode of I'm Here For It. Stoked to have you. Thanks for listening. Be kind. Be kind to others. Be kind to yourself. And I think it's fair to say, whatever you're going through, whatever life looks like right now, I'm here for it. And this podcast is here for it. Maybe you're going through some rough stuff, and you can know it might not be okay, but you can be okay. And we love you. We'll see you next episode. Thanks for tuning in to the I'm Here For It podcast. Just a quick reminder, the thoughts and opinions shared on this show are our own. They don't necessarily represent the thoughts and opinions of our employers, our places of business, our families, or maybe even people that don't want to be associated with us anymore. And honestly, sometimes we even question our own thoughts and opinions after these shows have aired. We're not doctors, therapists, lawyers, experts in anything except maybe overthinking things. Well, maybe some of our guests are some of those things, but for real, this podcast is not about offering you professional or therapeutic help. We're just here having fun. It's for entertainment purposes and maybe a little bit of education. Yeah, we hope it can make your life better and make you smile and encourage you a little bit. But seriously, this is more like a group chat that you didn't know you needed. So don't take anything too seriously from us without at least double checking it with someone who actually knows stuff. Stay kind, stay curious, and no matter how weird it gets, we're here for it.